Being strong. You've been told you need to be strong as a man. As a boy, you were taught to hold it together, push through, never let them see you struggling. And look, there is honestly value in determination, grit, and resilience. We need these things in our life. But here's where this mindset holds us back. The pressure to never break is exactly what's limiting your growth as a man. Today, we'll explore what dropping the pressure to never break looks like and how we can develop the skill, and it is a skill, of sharing the load. We will also look at why sharing the load won't make you weaker. It will help you step into being a man who can handle life's challenges with much greater ease. So let's get started. You've been taught to be strong. We as men, so many of us have been taught to be strong. We hear this on social media, people like David Goggins, family, friends, other men. We've been told when we feel strong emotions, the response of a man is to grit your teeth and power through. When challenges come up in your life, things like hard work, grinding more, and forward motion is always your answer. You'll often feel like a lone wolf, and you just have that self-reliance and feeling that you're only going to solve life's challenges by yourself. This is your definition of being a man. It's not everyone's, but if you're watching this video, this is probably the situation you're in. And your philosophy is never show weakness, and the feeling that you must never break, you must never share your emotions, never share that things are getting too much for you. But there's a price which comes with being strong. You face life alone. You're that lone wolf, and as a result, you feel isolated. You might feel some despair. You feel that all that weight is on your shoulders. You also push through things. When you have a challenge, when a hurdle comes up in your life, you put a lot of energy into doing all that hard work yourself and not asking for support. And this leads to fatigue and stress in your body. This might be tension in your jaw, tightness in your body, in your chest. And these may be feelings you don't even spend time noticing. You may want to numb out to be able to cope with the pressure you're under. You hide yourself. You don't share your emotions, your challenges with other men or loved ones. So no one really knows who you are. And you only really have one approach to the challenges you face. And that is one of grit, determination, working harder. As a result of this mindset, you become rigid. This is your one mode of operating. And it's really uncomfortable for you to test anything else, test out a different approach. So you really struggle to adapt to life's challenges, and everything feels like hard work. The problem is, if you're a guy who's been in this situation, maybe you've seen advice online, which is, I just need to talk more. Guys just need to talk more. People say men just need to talk and think this will fix all male problems. And I think this is a massive problem, just pushing out this advice, and it's also a misconception. The problem is, as men, if we've been someone we've been isolated, we've been a lone wolf, we haven't really shared our burdens with others, then we have an identity around being strong. So to jump from this place of where we feel we're strong by being by ourselves, by pushing through, and then making that huge jump to talking and sharing our thoughts more, that is incredibly daunting. And we immediately, and I've had this in my own life when I didn't know how to share with other people, I judged and still judge in some ways in my life that if I'm sharing, that I'm being weak or feminine. Going from being a lone wolf to someone who shares their feelings is deeply risky for us as men. And it's not a straightforward fix where a guy's struggling in his own life. He's a lone wolf. He feels that strength is his only response. If you're that guy, it's a risk for you to suddenly come out and share your thoughts and feelings. You might not even see the benefit in that. But the question for you is more strength really what you need? If you've spent your whole life being strong and you've got to this stage in the video, do you really think more strength, more determination, more grit is going to solve your life and personal problems? If you're watching this, you probably fundamentally believe that people don't trust a man who has problems, who shares those problems with others. You feel that you have a responsibility to be the one who is always stable, who's always stoic and strong. You feel that you must handle this alone. There's no such thing for you in your mindset that allows you to ask for help, ask for support from other men. And you may believe that by doing so, this shows you're weak, and you can feel embarrassment and shame about doing that. So you go even deeper into self-reliance and you continue to push through. Here's the reframe I want you to take into your life. Men who collaborate win. And I want to focus on this skill of expression. Your belief is you think sharing is weakness. But what if sharing was an incredible skill? A skill that we put on a pedestal and we looked up to in other men who are able to share. The truth is, the man who collaborates won't just survive, he will thrive. Think back to when we were tribal creatures. We would live in tribes, and you can imagine that the guy who went out by himself, the lone wolf, he wouldn't have the support of other members in the tribe. He couldn't turn to them emotionally. He would be the most likely to die. And the man who can negotiate relationships, who can share challenges, get different perspectives, he is the man who is going to thrive in that tribe and live the best life. So when we're a guy who's gone our own way and we're stepping into this place where suddenly we start to share feelings, this releases burdens. When we share what our challenges are, what our emotions are coming up for us, we have less internal pressure. You have a lighter experience of life. And this is incredibly skillful. It requires taking a personal risk. So we have this view that if you're sharing things as a man, you're emotional, you're weak. But actually, to share what's on our mind and release some of that pressure within, that's incredibly skillful. And looking at it as a skill is, I think, incredibly empowering for us as men. And sharing our challenges with others to find solutions, that's also so useful for our lives. I will often share with people in my network, my friends, my brothers. I will share with them the challenges I'm going through, and I just get a different perspective. Maybe I don't take that on, but just hearing it back is incredibly useful, and it allows me to rethink the problem. So what do we really need? I don't think men just need to talk. You have plenty of men who are much more emotionally open, and they share their feelings, they put them out there. But the question we always want to ask is, how does this relate to our day-to-day life? If sharing is just sort of reflecting on where we are on our challenges, and it comes into self-pity, where we're just complaining, then it is not that practical, because it needs to relate to our day-to-day life. So I think there are 3 layers of sharing that men need to overcome challenges. So I'm going to list them one by one and how these help. I think the first one is open sharing. This is where you're able to speak to someone else about the challenge you're going through. You share your experience, your feelings, your emotions. And if you're a guy who's been this lone wolf, you've gone on your own path, and you suddenly are able to just release what you've been feeling through talking, then that can be like a weight has lifted off your shoulders. If you're feeling very tense in your own life, you're feeling very stressed. If you've never done that before, it's going to make a massive difference. So that's the first part. But the other thing we also want to do is ask and get perspectives from other men. Like I said, maybe we don't take on that advice, but just hearing it back is incredibly useful to figure out what we do want to do and hear different approaches, and also understand other guys have been through this, so we don't feel so isolated. And the third thing we want is questioning. We want guys who have our best interests at heart and kind of ask questions to us about our experience, about what we're going through. Why is this fear coming up? What does this fear show up as? And why do you think it keeps happening? What can you do to move past this? By asking questions, it's like having some level of self-reflection, something similar to if you're having psychotherapy. Just the questions open up stuff in our minds, and we find new opportunities, new ways to react. And I think this is a level of intelligence and skill as well, to be able to take on this feedback, and it helps us in our wider life. Without these layers, different layers to talking and sharing our challenges, I don't think there's much change that happens. We need this kind of structure and different layers so we can bring it and relate it to our day-to-day life. This is a massive challenge for men. You probably feel this. What about sharing with a woman? It's one thing finding a group of men and sharing with them, but what about speaking to a woman, my partner? And we have all these messages online. My ex left me when I started talking. Sharing emotions kills attraction. Women don't want to hear this and they can't handle this. I believe this too. I was in my previous relationship. I took on the message that I needed to share. This is kind of the rhetoric that men just need to talk, as I mentioned earlier. And the impact of that was I went from someone who didn't speak at all to share it, just laying out my feelings, no filter. And that had a really negative impact. And it wasn't the fact that I was sharing what was coming up for me. It's that I wasn't taking responsibility for my own feelings. I was just dumping them on her. And that had a negative impact. So here's what no one says about this. The way to actually do this so that we protect the feminine, so they're not just having to deal with all our problems just being dumped on them. And it's really simple. All I say to my current partner is, say I've got really strong emotions. The last thing I want to do in that moment is just numb it or close down and hide that. It's not going to help our relationship. I just say, look, I've got something that's coming up for me emotionally. Do you have 10 minutes for me to share that with you? And that gives structure. And I'm taking responsibility for my experience. I'm still able to handle my emotions, but I just want the space to express it. And giving that structure hasn't worsened our relationship in any sense. It's deepened it. And that's something I've done consistently throughout the relationship. But I believe the feminine in that moment needs some structure, needs to know that you have things overall under control. Even though the emotions might be very strong, you have some level of control over the situation and have structure. So that's how we can handle it with women, and that's been a massive benefit for my life, handling it in that way. Let's now define the skill of sharing, the exact skill we want to develop in this area. We want to be able to sit with our emotions most of the time. We can handle what comes up, even if it's intense. And part of it is being proactively sharing our feelings and proactively asking for help. And this allows us to moderate and manage what we're going through. If we hide everything down, it's likely to come up very suddenly. It might be intense anger, intense sadness that we really can't control. We want to be able to do things that are proactive, have a group of men around us, brothers we can speak to, who we can share to, ask for help. And a big part of this is once we accept our own sadness and our own feelings and we acknowledge that's okay, in our relationships with others, people at work, we accept that in other people too. And it allows us to become more empathetic and also more effective. It's more likely we're going to be able to achieve our goals if we understand what is happening in us. And when we learn to sit with, learn from the emotions that come up for us and the thoughts, sensations, we can live lives that are more aligned with what we really want to do. The trap here is where we place responsibility on others, where we want someone to handle our own emotions. This is what, in my opinion, damages relationships, and this is where things like codependency come in. But it's about sitting with our emotions, handling them, being proactive in asking for help and sharing. And this is what allows us to manage and also get better perspectives on the challenges we do face from other people. We always make it practical in these videos. Here are 3 things you can try to sort of put into place some of the lessons from this video. Firstly, journal. Where does my desire to be seen as strong limit me? So this could be at work. It could be that you're on a project and something's really bothering you, but you want to give off this impression that everything's okay, that you're not affected by anything. So something in that area, you could simply say to someone, explain what is bothering you, make it clear that this is bothering you, and just reflect on these different areas. And then another part is share one emotion with anyone when you want to push through. So if your normal response, let's take this previous example, linking to that. If your normal response is, I'm just going to go harder, I'm going to push through, I'm going to handle this by myself, then the example I gave before would be a perfect example where you speak to someone about what your experience is, you're uncomfortable with maybe how they've treated you, talked to you on a work project. So allow yourself to share that one emotion. Start to tap into your feelings and allow these to give you a better experience in life where you're sharing what is coming up for you, so that that person can be aware and that problem no longer comes up. Get creative with this, and it's going to need to apply it to your situation. And I want you also to ask one person for help this week. This is about getting comfortable with asking for help, realizing that when we collaborate, when we share the load, our lives get better. And this is actually a skill. Just practice it. It could be anything. You're going to the shops. Maybe it's something you don't even need that much help with, but you ask someone anyway, just for the challenge, to get comfortable with the discomfort of asking for help. I think as men, often the challenge is we're told to either push through or we're told to be very vulnerable and sensitive. And sometimes as men, we want both. We want to be able to ask for help, but we still want to take responsibility for ourselves. We want masculinity. And I think the main message is we want to live a life where we have this skill of collaboration, where we can ask for help. Because you're going to find out once you start doing this that yes, there's going to be some pushback. You're going to feel weird. You might feel vulnerable when you're doing this. But as a result, your life will get better. You can collaborate. You'll lose some of this pressure of feeling like you have to be only reliant on yourself. I hope this is a good challenge. I hope this video provided some value. Please share this with a brother who needs to hear this message, and I will see you on the next one. Goodbye.